Thank you. I know it's been a busy and exciting day. I wanted to take a moment to highlight what exactly was accomplished last night when we had the fourth budget reallocation of the year. What we did last night was we effectively balanced the city of Harrisburg's budget. And we are going to have a truly balanced budget for this year, fiscal year 2014. First balanced budget done legitimately in anyone's memory for the city of Harrisburg. It's a tremendous step forward along the city's path to financial recovery, and it represents a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice on the part of every employee in the city. When we took office, as many of you know by now, because I have said it again and again, we started the year with essentially a $4 million plug in the budget, or a hole in the budget. We basically were set to spend $4 million more than we were going to take in revenues. I made it clear that the city was going to live within its means. We were not going to spend more than we took in revenue. And in order to do that, we had to institute a fairly severe hiring freeze that went across every department in the city, and essentially meant that a lot of the folks in the city had to take on the work of multiple jobs. And through that sacrifice of everyone involved, and through a very, very careful monitoring of all expenditures, not just payroll, we were able to close that gap slowly over the course of the year. And what we did last night was we took the savings from all those positions that weren't filled, and we essentially transferred those back into the budget to cover the gap. And there was a chart that came out last night that sort of showed where it came from. And it came from every department in the city. Public Works, Parks, Police, Fire, Codes, Planning, HR, IT, Finance, you name it.
How many positions?
A lot of positions, 2.475 million worth of just those positions. We also had, through careful management elsewhere, slightly higher than anticipated revenues on the earned income tax, which we were pleased. But we didn't want to project those until we were sure that they were coming in, and we feel very confident with that now. All of that meant, and I think this was the lead from last night, that we do have a truly balanced budget, and we are committed to proposing a genuinely balanced budget for next year, for fiscal year 2015. Which will have no accounting gimmicks or tricks such as this $4 million plug that was in the budget that we inherited. Living within our means is a very difficult thing to do, but it's required a combination of good management and sacrifice on the part of all of our employees. I didn't want that to be lost amidst sort of concerns over individual salaries or individual appointments. Everyone is pitching in, and everyone worked hard to make sure that that happened. I had a couple other things I wanted to mention since I have you all here. First of all, Halloween trick-or-treating for the city of Harrisburg is tomorrow night. It is the Thursday before Halloween, is the tradition here. Everyone will be out in force. I know my kids are really looking forward to it. We have one more pumpkin to carve this evening, and I'll be out in a variety of neighborhoods with my kids trick-or-treating tomorrow night. Should be a safe, wonderful night. What is my costume? I'm just going as myself. But the kids are very scary. We have Luigi. That's my youngest is Luigi. We have the Grim Reaper. I don't know why he's the Grim Reaper, but I think he liked the hood, and that's my middle son. And then my daughter is basically a cat witch type costume. Yeah. So it'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to that, and look forward to that every year. Also, on a more somber note, but just for your information, Corporal Chance resigned officially from the police force today, and is no longer a Harrisburg police officer, and obviously not being paid. And also, as was reported in the Patriot News, but we just received word this week about the courthouse site. It is true, and we can release the letter from the court system, that Harrisburg was ranked essentially 9th on the list of courthouses, which by all accounts probably puts any construction, if it were to be funded by Congress, out at least a decade. I'm very disappointed by the ranking, and we're going to continue to have conversations about how to utilize that space in the meantime. We've had a working group together. GSA is coming back with some charrettes and designs and drawings, and the idea of turning it into a park or a public use space rather than just simply an empty lot or a field in the meantime is very much under consideration.
Have you spoke with
So, yeah, go ahead.
Ralph Martan? I know
Yes.
he has a lot of investment
Mhm.
properties in that area.
Yes, he's been on the committee and he's
Yeah.
been very supportive of that, and I think he'd like to see it. So Friends of Midtown's been very active as well. There was a neighborhood survey. What sort of things would you like to see? A lot of different conversations and talk. You'll hear more about that. But we were waiting to hear whether or not we'd be in the upper half of those courthouses and how soon the prospects were. The reality is it's at least it's years and years away if it's going to be built at all, and that would require funding.
So would you say
Yep.
that site is officially dead?
No, I don't think it's officially dead, but it is not going to happen soon. And so I think we have a responsibility as a city to do something with that location in the meantime, even more so than if they were building it next year or the year after. So I'd like to turn it into a community space, maybe a new park in our park system, which would be a sort of exciting partnership with GSA, and I think we can do it. They're interested in doing something. No permanent structures, but we can certainly do something there on that site. And there will be more to come.
Mayor, when's the last time the city had a balanced budget?
I don't remember when the city had truly a balanced budget, because all the budgets in the past were essentially balanced to the extent that they were balanced by sort of taking money from other funds. And I think this is the first balanced budget in anyone's memory for the city of Harrisburg.
You're
So-
talking,
oh,
Ms.
sorry.
Mayor Reed's budgets. I think the first receiver, Uncle Vic, referred to something that these budgets might have been off balance for 20 years or so.
I think that's my belief as well. There was a lot of short-term borrowing and plugging the gaps to make them appear balanced, but clearly they weren't balanced. And that's similar to how this budget started at the beginning of the year with this $4 million plug. But as I say, and you can see it, it's very specifically documented down to the dollar. That money has now officially been balanced in the books and has been taken out of those salary line items and used to officially balance the
So
budget.
this year, the budget will be balanced, and you're proposing next year? a
Yes, that'll be next
balanced
month's
Next month,
discussion.
right.
Will be our budget for next year, but there will be no plug in next year's budget. We are going to only propose spending as much as we have available in revenue.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the savings? I know you said from each department,
Mhm.
but what exactly are you talking about? Are you talking about pay freezes? What
Yeah.
exactly?
Essentially, we did not hire positions scattered throughout the city in every department. And to be fair, every department sort of chipped in. I'm not debating the fact that obviously we needed them. They were priorities in the budget, but we simply didn't have the money to pay for them. So we did do some hirings, as you know. We hired new police officers, we hired new firefighters, but other than that, we were very careful in who we brought on board. And over the course of the year, we accrued those savings. Instead of spending them on salary, we let them sit, and then last night we transferred them from the salary line item back to pay off that plug. And there was a graph that was handed out last night that shows you how much came from each department, so you can get
And that was a
a
total
better.
of 2.4, I think you said, right?
Yes, that's right. 2.475 was what needed to come out of concessions and vacancy. The rest of the $4 million plug was made up in other ways.
Cool.
Mhm.
Could you address the fire budget? How does this budget compare to previous ones with the amount of overtime that the Harrisburg firefighters received?
Overtime started out at the beginning of the year at an extraordinary number and has decreased over the course of the year as we've done two things. As you know, first we ended up negotiating a contract which reduced the minimum manning. That helped tremendously, but that wasn't there at the beginning of the year. And secondly, we hired 13 new firefighters that were able to come in at a relatively lower pay cost than certainly paying overtime to others would have been, and they have been able to cover that up. So you have seen month by month a decrease in overtime, so much so that our projected overtime budget for next year, which we're going to propose, is going to be much less than it was for this year and the years prior.
And this budget is the result in savings, large part from attrition, employees that leave, their positions not being filled, not hiring people. But what about next year? You're still short-staffed in the police department, in the fire department, and other departments.
That's right.
How do you address that without going outside of the balanced budget?
It's going to be very difficult, and what we have to do is go department by department. And if the desire is to hire additional personnel, then we're going to have to find those savings elsewhere in the expenditures of the department, whether they're capital expenditures or other priorities. It's going to have to be a delicate balance. But we've already sent the word out to all departments that we're essentially in a flat budget environment. We're not anticipating new revenues for next year at this time, and that means we're going to have to make difficult choices. So that'll be the discussion for next month. You're going to see a proposed budget, and it'll be a balanced budget, and it's going to be a lean budget.
And with the, one last question, sorry, Dave. With the $5 million that the state has provided the city of
Sure.
Harrisburg, you are counting on that being almost an annual?
Has to be.
Okay.
The city is 100% dependent on that payment from the state. That was calculated into the strong plan. That is an assumption of that funding we have to have, and that's a large portion of our budget, $5 million. Yeah.
A couple of things. First, I think I spoke to Bruce, and he was kind of talking. It's like trying to pick your favorite children, right? I mean, trying to figure out which department gets what staff member, yet keeping the budget kind of lean.
I would say that every department made sacrifices, and there isn't a department in the city that wouldn't like additional personnel. And we are doing the best that we can to manage things effectively. We're also looking at other ways to make things easier, such as the 311 system that we're still planning to launch before the end of the year. But the reality is, I think all departments sacrificed, and that's why it's unfortunate if we get into back and forth about this department versus that department. I think we're all a team here at the city. Everybody shares that same commitment to living within our means, and you're going to see a united front for all departments.
I know it doesn't want to be your focus, but can you clarify again the salary involving Police Chief Tom Carter? One of Williams' press comments earlier. Any money above his current salary now, do you view that as a pay raise? I mean, for her, is it semantics, raise versus restoration, but how do you view it?
When Chief Carter was made the permanent chief, which is one of the first actions I took as becoming mayor, the amount allotted for his salary in the budget was $87,000. I wanted to propose a higher salary figure at the beginning of the year. I had suggested $94,000, which is the same amount that Chief Ritter had been paid. At that time, the city was under receivership, and we were told by the receiver that we could not give pay raises to positions that were currently filled or occupied, as opposed to new positions that were being created or something along those lines. So we stuck at the 87 amount. That's what was budgeted in the budget, and that's what the chief has been paid for this year. What I said to City Council was, I am in favor of giving the chief a raise within the context of next year's budget, and that will be part of the discussion for where we're going to put salaries and how we're going to do things. But we're going to have to figure out how to pay for that, and that's going to have to come from somewhere else. There's no free money anywhere. So I think the chief is deserving of a raise. I think he should be paid more. I think a lot of people are, and so if we're going to do certain raises, we've got to make sure that we do them responsibly and we pay for them somewhere else in the budget.
So is 94,000 still the target?
I think 94,000 is a fair number, and as I say, that is what I originally proposed for the chief. I think he deserves 94,000. I'll be putting that forth within the context of the budget proposal for next year. Now,
What
council,
about the captains? I'm sorry.
captains would go to 85,
Okay.
and they are currently at 81 or 82, which isn't very much above the other rank. And there are ways that we can reallocate funds to do it. I think the question was, what's the appropriate way to do it? And I would say the appropriate way to do that is within the context of a budget proposal, which shows you where the money is going to come from, gives council an opportunity to give input. Remember, council voted for the salary at 87, voted for the budget, and that's been the sort of guiding financial document that we've used over the course of the year. Do we want to do it on an ad hoc way, or do we want to do it as part of a larger budget proposal? We certainly didn't feel we were in a position to give the chief a raise in the midst of a hiring freeze. You see how that would be a mixed message. We were trying to save money to plug this gap. Now, it's true, we were able to plug it last night, and we still have a little bit of time left in the year. But I think at this point it makes sense to give the chief and the captains a raise effective for next year. That'll have a public vetting. It'll have a full conversation about it before council, and it would go into effect in January.
You see the difference between raise and restoration, where Wanda's getting upset. She feels the word saying raise, so you want to give Chief Carter back to 94,000.
Okay, Chief Carter never made 94,000.
I understand.
Okay, ever. So it's not a restoration. The person who made 94,000 was the previous chief. That was Chief Ritter.
I understand.
So
this.
okay, yes.
But I'm just saying, for Wanda's sake, she feels the word raise will alarm the unions, and see that leadership is getting a raise where maybe they should be where they should have been previously. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that not so much the people. I understand Chief Carter himself has
Yeah.
never made that much. But do you
Okay.
agree with her or disagree with her distinction of a raise versus restoration?
That's her distinction. That's not how I would characterize it. I think that it would be a raise. I think it would be a raise based on merit. Clearly, it would be if he's budgeted for 87 this year and we budget him for 94 next year. That would effectively be a raise. Should he receive that? Is it equal in a historical context to what other chiefs have made? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I will show you how we're going to pay for that raise. And that is that'll be in the budget document, open for public discussion.
Mayor,
Yep.
at what point do you think that the city will be able to give employees raises on a yearly basis? Because
Right.
there's just a lot of controversy over giving a police chief a raise or the captains, and just like you said, a lot of your workers are
Well,
doing a lot of things that just one person is fulfilling several job duties.
so there is a raise across the board for unionized workers for next year. It is a 1% raise. That was negotiated as a part of their contracts, which were a part of the Strong Plan. So that is at least something compared to last year when there was no raise at all. So there's a 1% raise. There is a problem with giving sort of ad hoc raises to individuals when you have a lot of different individuals that are working hard and contributing. I think that's the point of why it should be done within the context of a larger budget conversation and discussion. You have a full public vetting about all that. Generally, I'm in favor of paying people more money, but only if we can afford to pay it.
Is in the union contracts, is it 1% every year starting next year, or what's the?
It's 1% for this coming year. Bruce, do you know if it is?
I have to admit, I'm not looking at 2016 yet.
Yeah,
so
we're
that's not relevant to my perspective.
for this year. It's
so-
1%, and that's a large amount of money. I
It
don't know.
is.
Do you know what that
I had
came
not
to?
figured that number.
Okay, but
That's a number that we will definitely have, when we propose the budget.
But that is an example of another way in which expenditures are going up and revenues are staying flat. So we have to find a way to pay for that. It's going to mean cutting parts of the budget, and we can do it, but it's going to be a painful process.
Can you give us any other previews? You're in the process of preparing the budget for next year now. Any other big changes from last year to this year?
Not particularly, because we just don't have the ability to propose any bold new initiatives or new departments. If anything, you're going to see a contracting of certain positions, which we didn't fill this year and that we won't fill again next year. You may see the creation of a new position or two if we feel that those positions can effectively bring in more revenue for the city and pay for themselves. We've had that conversation. A risk management position for the city, for instance. There are a lot of needs. Right now, the way the process is working is that each of the department heads has prepared his or her budget proposal for next year. They were told and instructed, don't ask for more money than you spent this year. That's going to be the starting point. We are in the process, meaning myself and the finance director, are meeting with those department heads and going line by line through the budget and having them explain and justify each dollar. And the goal is to find enough savings throughout the whole budget to be able to accommodate the rising costs of both salaries and healthcare, which is more expensive than everything else, and to present the public with a truly balanced budget. If we can get to the point where we start bringing in more revenue for the city, which is certainly the goal, that's part of the LERTA proposal, it's part of other proposals that we're putting forth, then we can begin to expand the scope of city services, but right now, we have to continue to live within our means. And I believe that's what I was elected to do. I believe that that is not what the city has done historically, and I believe that that will put us on a firm footing over the course of several years to eventually leave Act 47 and to be financially stable.
And sorry, do you have a target number that you think of cops and firefighters the city needs?
I think, again, I think that the needs of the city are great across every department. We'll do the best to live within our means and to balance that, effectively and accordingly. So, would I like to hire more cops, more firefighters, more public works folks? Yes, I would. And I think that will be the long-term goal. But the short-term goal is incremental steps. We filled a lot of positions this year. Those firefighters, those police officers are now, fully trained and I think actively making a difference in the community. And we will, continue to maintain that and replace levels as they leave. And we're going to look for some outside funding sources for the police department. We've given the superintendent a proposal to reinstate the SRO program for next year. If the school district is willing to do that, that would allow the city to hire 5 more police officers that could be trained and go directly into that. There's other grant funding, other opportunities. We're waiting to hear back from them on that proposal, which seemed to be pretty well received.
I know the superintendent is trying to hire 10 security monitors, and
Yes.
those monitors will be trained by police,
Right.
the police department.
And that's for this
Would you
year.
want- right.
That is that, and we agree, we're helping and
We're
we're
helping
supportive
with
of
that,
that,
okay.
and that's coming from their security budget. They have that already approved in their budget, and they just need to fill those positions. We're saying that the best long-term effective strategy moving forward for next year and beyond is the reinstitution of the SRO program. And those SRO officers can then supervise the other sort of private
Now,
security
will the
forces.
SROs have weapons? Will they?
The SROs would have weapons,
Okay,
yes.
but not the
These
monitors.
security monitors would
Will
not.
not. Okay.
The SROs would be full city police officers. They would just have that connection to the schools. They would help with truancy. They would help with effectively creating an environment in which the police are out there helping troubled youth and helping keep them in school and focused on getting a good education.
Back
Yes.
to the police raises for a second. On Monday
Sure.
night, Tom Carter said that he refused to accept the raise because his 2 captains' pay, he wanted their pay to be.
Okay, that is
fixed.
true. Technically, what happened, and it's complicated, is that under receivership, the receiver claimed that we were in a salary freeze for people who were already in their position in last year's budget moving to next year's budget. That included the 2 captains. It probably did not have to apply to the police chief because he was moving from acting police chief to full-time police chief. But the police chief stated at the time and made it very clear to us and the receiver's office that he would not take a raise from his 87 to 94 unless his 2 captains also got a raise to 85, and that he felt that it would send the wrong message if he was getting a raise and others weren't. So he's been very conscious of not sending the wrong message, which is why it was sort of unfortunate to put all this in as in sort of opposition to one another. I think the best solution, and the one that I support, and I'm sure that the president of council supports and other council members support, is proposing a raise for all 3 of them in next year's budget.
Mayor?
Yes.
President Williams, Council President Williams had a press conference this morning speaking about that topic, but also she brought up that there was a potential loss of substantial funds. I think her quote was $50,000 a month because amendments weren't finalized concerning the Harrisburg Strong Plan. And I believe that she said it was the solicitor's office that was holding up those amendments. Have you had a chance, did you watch the press conference?
I did not.
Okay.
I did follow certain tweets of media folks in this room, which were good. I was in the park system meeting with a group of folks from the Peace Garden that are looking to plant some trees, and it was in the rain, but I did follow along. I believe what President Williams is referring to is she is referring to a pool of funds which have not been collected by Standard Parking, which are tickets that have not been paid on time or in a timely manner because Standard has not moved to collect them in the court system.
Yeah.
And that is what she's talking about. That is not related to the balanced budget or the city's budget. In fact, the city has received every penny that it anticipated receiving up to this point from the parking system. And we get paid in a variety of different ways, from the parking tax to a series of payments that come via the bond indentures that were issued as last year. The city actually gets priority payment in those payments. So what essentially would happen if there is a shortfall is the city would be paid first, and the other creditors and bondholders would get paid second or third.
Some of the payments. Some of the payments.
Some of them, right. But we are on track to receive every dime of the parking that we anticipated receiving. That is an issue, the collecting on the outstanding tickets. And what council needs to do is to pass a ordinance. This is what she's referring to, I think, saying that it's going to be done, I think she said, by December 1st, which basically takes the city's ordinances and makes them in line with the strong plan, and sort of cleans up any sort of outstanding contradictions, that sort of thing.
There was no legislation,
Yeah.
there was no paragraph to move those tickets up to the district court level.
Yes. Now, I think it's the solicitor's position that while we're happy to do that, there are other things that the court system could cite. This was something that administrative difficulty which they've been working through over the course of the year to get that up and running. But I think they've got that pretty well settled now, and I think those revenues will be brought into the system before the end of the year.
Does that mean that the court system cannot issue warrants, bench warrants out for outstanding parking tickets? In essence, does Standard Parking have no legal recourse to actually collect fines?
Correct.
I mean, if you get a ticket and you don't pay it, does Standard Parking have any legal authority to go after the owner of the vehicle?
I think at the beginning of the year, they did not have that authority, and they hadn't necessarily thought through exactly how it would be that they would get that authority. They've been working with the court system to get that authority to collect on fines, and that's what they've done. And they're looking to the city then to pass this ordinance as well to be a part of that sort of package.
Would that be retroactive? Because I've heard of actually some vendors downtown Harrisburg that are parking their vehicles and they are just banking ticket after ticket, thinking that they're not going to have to pay because they don't have the legal requirement to go after them.
I would certainly not recommend that strategy. I would not recommend that strategy. I believe the intention of the parking system is to collect on all outstanding tickets.
But they legally, at this point, until these amendments come down and are approved by council and become law, that's still a question whether they have the legal right.
This is a question for Standard Parking. They may or may not need an ordinance from the point of the city, but they need to begin the process of collecting those outstanding tickets, which they have not done up to this point, correct, but which they are planning to do.
And is it the DJs, the district magistrates themselves that are refusing? I think we have Marcia Stewart downtown, we have Judge Pianka in Midtown. Are they refusing to issue bench warrants out for these tickets?
No, because nobody has,
They don't bring them
they haven't brought the, they
Oh,
haven't brought
Standard
the
hasn't
ticket.
turned them
Yeah,
over to the
that's
DJ's
right.
office.
Because there's no legal definition in the asset transfer agreement
All right, so they're not making the decision because they
I'm
don't
gonna
have
give
to.
Dave.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
give
you're
Dave.
the legal
Well,
expert,
I'm gonna
Dave.
give Dave.
Just-
Well, you
Yeah,
just started, you just started
Well,
back in August, and
he,
are there any consequences?
That
to
is
this? And
no,
it's
that is correct,
Yeah.
and
The
true.
DPH were like, yeah, we haven't gotten any tickets.
Now, one suggestion that I had when we had the last parking advisory meeting was for
Which was closed.
yes,
we get
although
us?
although
Not
I
tonight.
strongly suggested to be open. To be fair, was that they consider establishing maybe a traffic court. Similar to what we have for the housing court, so that the backlog and everything can be effectively processed and not cause an undue case log burden on the existing district justices, which are overworked as it is with a lot of cases. But that is what President Williams was referring to. I want to make it clear that that has nothing to do with our balanced budget, because we have received the anticipated parking revenue for this year.
Okay, we're gonna have to cut
Okay.
it off now because we have a 2
Hold
o'clock.
on, one-
I do.
one
have-
quick question.
I can take
Wait,
one
wait,
last
wait.
question. Yes.
What's your favorite Halloween candy?
I said that Tootsie Pops. That's what I'm giving out. If you come to my house, I'll give you a Tootsie Pop. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mayor.
Thank you.